Thank you, TC, so much. I'm excited to be here and talk to you all about grants that are offered to those buyers that live in the state of Virginia. And we do also service North Carolina and Florida. However, this presentation is just for our potential home buyers looking to purchase in Virginia. So the ins and outs of grant programs. I will say, along with all of the other loan officers at Tidewater Home Funding, that when we get a client that calls us and they're wanting to get pre-qualified, the first thing our job is to see what grants that they can actually qualify for. Next slide. So Virginia Housing actually offers first-time homebuyer grants to anyone who has not owned a property. So unless it's in a targeted area. So repeat buyers are acceptable in some of their programs, which is new to Virginia Housing. Household income and sales price is important. On grant money, I think the most important thing you're going to see as a common thread through all of these grant programs is you could have one person on the loan applying for the mortgage, but maybe you have your mother that lives with you, a grandmother that receives Social Security income. Maybe your spouse isn't on the loan, but they also work. So all these grants are based on total household income, regardless if they are on the loan or not. So that's the common thread with all these grants. So you're gonna, so when I ask you, who else lives in the home, and we do need to get income from them, just to make sure that we're meeting those requirements that are set down. Each home buyer with Virginia Housing must take their first-time homebuyer education course. Fortunately, Virginia Housing does offer it online, or you can attend a class in person. It's really your preference. And again, Virginia Housing, this is only for a primary residence. It's not for investment or for second home. Next slide. A first-time home buyer, what constitutes a first-time home buyer is you cannot have owned a property, a primary residence, in the last 3 years. So some people don't realize that. They think they've owned a property 10 years ago. And when I tell them, well, it's not been 3 years, so you do qualify for being a first-time home buyer. Next. The exceptions to that is if your home buyer has owned a manufactured home in the past 3 years, because it was not on a permanent foundation. If your home buyer has rental property and they did not occupy that as a primary residence, again, that does not count towards their 3 years. And we get documentation to show that. We usually go by their tax returns. We get a verification of rent to show where they currently are living. And as long as that rental property is not their primary residence, then that we don't have to count that against them. Virginia Housing came out with non-bond programs, and non-bond does not have to be a first-time home buyer. So it can be from somebody who currently owns a property and they're selling it and they need to purchase another home and be able to use Virginia Housing. So that's been a really great benefit for us to offer. And then home buyers that are in an area of economic opportunity, again, targeted areas, don't have to meet that 3 years of not owning a primary residence to be a first-time home buyer. Next. Here's the minimum credit scores for each program. FHA, VA, which is for your veterans, and RHS, which is your rural housing, a 620 minimum credit score. Conventional is a 640. And to get a plus second mortgage, that credit score, 680. Next. As you can see, different areas require different, have different income household limits prepared for them. So in our area, I know you guys are on the south side. So if you look down at like the Norfolk, Newport News area, if you have 2 people in a house, you can actually qualify for the grant of $84,000. Again, it's total household income. And then we can move over to the non-bond program. And as you can see, that's with the second mortgage. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But as you can see, that income goes up to $121,000. So that's a huge benefit that we're able to offer people with higher incomes. Okay. Again, here's the non-bond. So the non-bond, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. And your income cannot exceed $160,000 total household income. So that's a huge benefit. Again, that's just been released this year. Next. The down payment assistance program with Virginia Housing, or they have a closing cost assistance grant. So if you're a veteran or you're getting a rural housing area loan, those automatically give you 100% of the purchase price if you're eligible for those programs. So you don't really need any down payment assistance because you're getting 100% purchase price. But Virginia Housing have what they call a closing cost assistance. So if you have if you're a veteran and you're looking for some assistance with those closing costs and you qualify, you can get 2% of the purchase price, which is huge. Down payment assistance is if you are a first-time home buyer and you meet that requirement, then for example, FHA requires that you put down 3.5%, and Virginia Housing will give you 2.5% of that down payment. So you only need to have 1% and closing cost into the transaction. And that's a huge savings, a great benefit to a lot of buyers. And so that's how the down payment assistant works, closing cost. The plus second mortgage, if you're in a position to where you're like, I don't really have the extra down payment, you can actually finance your first mortgage and your second mortgage with Virginia Housing. And FHA requires 3.5% down payment, and your second mortgage will be a 3.5% down payment. It's just an added payment, but it's amortized over 30 years. So it can be fairly small, $50, $70 a month added. And for somebody coming out with $12,000, $15,000, that can make a pretty big difference for them. There's no prepayment penalty. You can pay that second mortgage off at any time. And then they also offer the Spark, and Spark is a sponsoring partnership. And for those who qualify with Virginia Housing programs, can then reach out to these partnerships and get 1% off the rate. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. So some great added features and benefits to the Virginia Housing program. Next. This is about the down payment assistance. Again, if you are applying for a conventional loan, it requires 3% down, but Virginia Housing, you can get a 2% grant. FHA requires 3.5%, and Virginia Housing will give you 2.5%. Once again, I'm just going to repeat, this is based on total household income. So we would need the income. Their credit score is not pulled. We don't do any of that. We just have to verify their income. And we typically do that with the current pay stub and a W-2, depending on what their employment is. Okay. What's really great about this is that not only can you get a down payment assistance from Virginia Housing, but there are also other grants available that you can actually layer your down payment assistance together. Okay, next. Next. Oh, closing cost. Okay, sorry, she did it. Again, closing cost assistance is for first-time home buyer requirement. It's for USDA, or if you're a veteran, and it can be used for closing cost assistance. So USDA loans and VA loans are 100% of the purchase price. And some veterans, or if you're getting a USDA loan, they will need some assistance with those closing costs. And Virginia Housing, if you qualify, will give you 2% of the purchase price. So again, that can be a really great benefit for you. It does, again, include total household income, and that grant can be layered with other grants if a buyer qualifies. Okay, next. The plus second mortgage that we talked about. So if the grants sound good and you're like, I still don't have enough money, I need, I need some more assistance. The second mortgage is excellent. So it couples in with your first mortgage, and then Virginia Housing lets you finance that down payment, 100% of it, over a 30-year period. So that second mortgage payment can be pretty small. Again, a conventional requires you to have a 3% down payment, with a 680 credit score and 3.5% for an FHA loan. If your credit score is greater than 680, then you can actually roll in your down payment and your closing costs together. So on a conventional, you can get 4.5%, and on FHA, you can get a 5%. So in numbers that I have just done very recently, people are financing $18,000, $20,000, and that way their minimal cost is $1,000 into the transaction. So it's really, really wonderful. The rates are really good with Virginia Housing to help people with these to be able to qualify. Okay, next. The Spark program is excellent, and the Spark program is a way that they are able to help people bring down the rate by 1%. So if we're locking someone in at a 6% rate and they can qualify for the Spark program, their final rate would be 5%. When rates were 7%, you could lock in and your final rate would be a 6%. So it's excellent. We help you. We have a list of different partnerships, communities that work with us with Virginia Housing, and it's our responsibility to set you up with them. They do require that all of them require that you go through their own counseling with them. Some of them do it over the phone, in person, or a Zoom call. Just a few of those communities that offer the Spark program is Catholic Charities of Eastern Virginia, Child and Family Services of Eastern Virginia. I guess it's called the Up Center. Hampton Redevelopment Center. Hampton Redevelopment does all the local cities, just not Hampton. And then a really good one also I just worked with was the Urban League of Hampton Roads. So when we know we have a qualified buyer, it's our responsibility, mine, to reach out to one of those partnerships and request that you meet with them to get a % off of your rate. And by getting a % lower, that makes your mortgage payment lower. So it's definitely more feasible for you and helping you to achieve that home ownership. Okay, next. Oh, I will say about the Spark funds real quick. It is only while funds are limited. So we always have to wait for those to come back, but we have plenty of them now, which is good. Sales price limit in the certain areas, and as you can see, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Newport News, $475 is the max purchase price. Okay. Alrighty, and then if you want more information, you can put your phone on that QR code. It takes you to the Virginia Housing website, and there you can actually find a lot more. If you were interested, you can actually start taking the Virginia, the new home buyer course. It's online. I highly suggest that you do that because it gives you a lot of really great information, not only how to, locate a lender, hopefully you will call us, but, how to get ready for it, the responsibilities of owning a home. And it really kind of walks you through that, the responsibilities that your realtor needs to have with you. So it just really empowers you and educates you. So I would highly encourage you to take that class. A lot of my buyers, they take it once they're in application, they found a house and they wish that they had taken it sooner. So they've really gotten a lot of great valuable information from that class. Okay, next. So the next few slides I'm going to talk about, that was Virginia Housing. So as you can see, Virginia Housing is a great program used to help people, and that is their mission, is to get people into homes. And so the municipalities, the local cities, also have grants, and we can couple those grants together, and that's what we talk about, layering those grants. So each district, each city has their own guidelines, their own income, and their own credit scores. So fortunately for you, we have access to all of that, and we make it very easy for you to do that. So this is just a kind of what Hampton Roads it requires, is that their grant program can be used for down payment and closing cost, a 620 middle credit score, which is where we like you to be. If you're not at a 620 credit score, we are very happy to work with you and give you education on that to get you there. You must meet 80% below household income. 1% of money into the transaction has to come from your own money saved. It can't come from a 401k. And the 35 and 45% back-ended ratios, that's where they kind of want your mortgage payment and all of your debt. They don't want you going into a home where you're struggling. So they keep those debt to income ratios very, very reasonable, I believe. And you cannot have over 10% of liquid assets. So if they feel if you have 10% of your own liquid assets, that you don't really need the assistance of the grants. And that's with Hampton Roads Planning District. As you can see, their income level is on the median to low side. And this is again, based on total household income. Doesn't matter if they're on the loan or not. Okay. Next slide. This is the areas that they service from Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Isle of Wight, Yorktown, James City, Waynesburg, Poquoson, and Gloucester. As you see, the different cities, they can, on average, go up to $14,500. If you live in Chesapeake, you could get a $25,000 grant. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. And if you do receive one of those grants, how it works is when you close on the loan, they put a soft second on the lien on the property. And so if you were to sell within a 5-year period and say you got a $14,500 grant and you sold within the next 2 years, they'll take that money back. So it is very understandable that you realize that you must occupy the property for the next 5 years. Okay, a lot of these grants are designed that way. If you have a 10-year, so if you got a grant over 15,000 up to 40, you have to stay in the property for 10 years. And they make sure, and we all remind everybody that everybody really understands how the guidelines work. Okay, next. Important details that are not accepted. So you can't do a 203K loan, and that's a renovation loan. So if you have a property that needs some work on it, probably getting a grant isn't going to work for that, because they don't want you to move into a property where you're having to do a lot of repairs. You're a first-time home buyer, and you don't want a lot of expenses on just upkeep. So they really look after you, and they make sure that property is move-in ready and that you're not going to be incurring any huge expenses right after you own that property. No short sales or bank-owned property. Again, the reason for that is typically if it's a bank-owned, banks aren't going to do any repairs, and they don't want you to be in a situation to where you move in and you don't have a hot water heater and you're looking at a few $1,000s to repair. Okay. And again, no as is. They want the home that you're going to buy to be in very, very good condition. Next. As is, again, I just kind of talked about that a little bit. As is properties, they don't recommend them for first-time home buyers. Because typically if it's as is, that means the buyer's not paying for anything. And if you're a first-time home buyer and you want these grants, then you're not in a position to be able to make all those kinds of repairs. So they make sure they actually send out a home inspector to the property. Not only is the appraiser go out, but they also send an inspector to make sure those properties meet their guidelines for you. So you can feel really good about knowing that you're getting a pretty good house. Okay, next. When you do apply, and these are things that we will remind you. So if you give me a call and you're like, hey, gee, I'd like to see what I can qualify for. We do all of this at pre-qual. So you're not even out there shopping for houses yet, okay? Because we want to know exactly what you qualify for. So you would need 3 months bank statements, all pages. So, when you get a bank statement, sometimes, 1 of 5, page 4 is blank. Well, it still has a number on it, so we still need it. Any deposits over $100 you would have to explain. 1 month of pay stubs from all household members. Remember, there's that common denominator, total household. 1 month of pay stubs, 2 years of signed tax returns, W-2s. You can take the Virginia Housing New Home Buyer course that we just talked about. They accept that. And Virginia Housing Spending Plan, that's on their website. So they kind of want you to itemize all your spending, you know, how much you spend on clothes, cable, your cell phones, insurance. So they really kind of set a budget with you. And I think that's really important. And then if you've had a separation or divorce, and the reason we ask that, we just have to make sure that there's no marital property or that alimony or child support isn't changing any hands, because again, that would be considered income. Okay. Next. It takes about, once we turn everything in, and the approval is good for 90 days. So once you're approved for everything, that gives you 3 months to be able to go out there and shop and find your home. And the turn time, once we turn everything over to them, is usually 7 to 10 business days. So they move pretty fast with this grant money. Okay, next. And then how do you get started? So you call me. Yeah, you call me and I help you along, or you can call anybody at Tidewater Home Funding. We all have the same mind of servicing you. So you would want to take the Virginia Housing first-time home buyer class. I think that would be real important for you to do. You can take it online or in person. Once you're done with it, you're going to get a certificate at the end that says that you completed it. So we need a copy of that. Get pre-approved. That's what my job is to get you pre-approved and get you in the right places and the right hands. And then we would submit the application online to the individual city that you're buying your house in. Okay. Next. This is Department of Housing and Community Development. So this is their program. Again, theirs is going to be a little bit different. They do have the minimum credit score of 620. All of these programs have to be for a primary residence. Virginia Housing, all grants are primary residence. It's not for investment property or second home. 50 to 80% of the average median income is required. You have to complete the HUD home buyer course, and 40,000 maximum per household. So you can't get any more than 40,000. And again, you have to meet their income limits, household income limits. Okay, next. And there is their maximum income limit. So for example, if there's 4 of you in the household and you don't exceed, and this is gross income, and this is everything. So if you work, you know, a full-time job and say you're driving for Domino's in the evening, we have to count that income, all income. If you're a single parent and you have 2 children in the home and your mom moved in to help you and she's on Social Security income, we need your income and her Social Security income. So those are things that we walk through. So it's all gross income. What I love most about Tidewater Home Funding and the process that we have put into place is that we get all of your income up front at the very, very beginning. And we actually send it over to underwriting, and they approve the income before we even start going to any of these other grants, so we can see exactly where you start from. So that's been a really great help. And then when you get a contract on a house, because we can't reserve any grant funds until you have a contract, then we're able to go ahead and just notify everybody that you've got a house, and we move the process along pretty quickly. Okay, next. Newport News Redevelopment, again, they have a program, down payment assistance. As you can see, each municipality has grants available for people who are first-time home buyers. It is a HUD-funded grant, up to $14,500 to eligible. And this is for Newport News and owner-occupied only, again, primary residence. And their program, their funds are available from July 1st. They just got funds until June 30th of next year. That's it. Next. The best practice in the application process is to, I would suggest you reaching not only out to me, because for one, I can go ahead and start pulling your credit, getting all your income together, and we can look at that and make sure that you're qualifying at least for what they're expecting you to qualify for. And then we'll have you reach out to those organizations. We can get the paperwork for you, and you have to go ahead and complete all their paperwork. We'll have most of the information. We can just help you go ahead and send that right on over to them and start the approval process. The application fee with them is $15. They do expect that payment. Buyers must be pre-approved, so you have to start with Tidewater Home Funding. And you are encouraged to not be hunting for a house until all these grants have been approved for you. Okay. Next. And then Newport News Redevelopment Housing Center does offer the Spark funds. And again, that's where you get the 1% off of your rate. And that's a huge, huge savings for you. And you have to be able to use a Virginia Housing Loan Program to get a Spark fund. Okay, here's Norfolk. If anybody's looking to buy in the city of Norfolk, again, that 620 credit score, as you can see that running pattern with all of them, that's the minimum credit score. You could go lower, but you wouldn't be able to qualify for a grant. So that's the goal, is to get you there so you can qualify for some grant money. Any collection over $1,000, you see their requirements have changed a little bit. So they don't want any collections on there. They'll let you go up to a 55% debt to income. So that's huge. Some of them are much lower than that. But they want you to have $3,000 in assets. So they want you to be able to have a couple mortgage payments set aside in case something should happen. You're not going to default on that mortgage. You always need a place to live. That should be your number one payment every month, is that mortgage. And we want to make sure that we're setting you up for success and not for failure. Okay. Again, the Spark program, 1% off, and that is only while funds are available. Again, the Urban League, I just closed one with them, and they did a great job. They even did the phone interview over the phone for the counseling. So that was a really nice benefit to do that. Okay, next. Okay, and that is all for me. And I just want to thank all of you so much for your time. I know it's a lot of information, and I don't expect you to know it all or to memorize it, but that's my job. And again, anyone at Tidewater Home Funding can help you. So please reach out to us. Any questions that you have, we are here to serve you and to help you become a homeowner. So I'm going to hand it over to Mary Beth Baker, and she's going to talk to you about our Federal Home Loan Bank grant that we have available as well.
Can you hear me now? All right. Thank you. All right. I appreciate the opportunity to participate this evening. I will be sharing information specific to that of the Federal Home Loan Bank and the grant programs that are available through our institution's membership, which we have the opportunity to share across the entire state of Virginia. So I'll let you move to the next slide, please. The first program that the Federal Home Loan Bank sponsors is the Community Partner Program. Now, you may ask, what is a community partner? A community partner is defined as a local educator, a local health care worker, a first responder, firefighter. In addition, the Community Partner Program is also applicable to that of our veterans and our active duty members of the military or their surviving spouse. The Community Partner Program allows for grant incentives up to $15,000 that can be awarded per household. And this is for the assistance of down payment funds and or closing cost. Next slide, please. In addition, those minimum requirements for the Community Partners Program is each participant must contribute $1,000 of their own funding. They must plan to occupy the home as their primary residence. They must also have income that falls either less than or equal to the 80% of the area median income level for the size of that household. And as G had made reference to, it does include the entire income for the household in relation also to the number that is represented by that household. The Federal Home Loan Bank also requires that homebuyer education and homebuyer counseling is a requirement and must be completed prior to funding. And they do offer that at a time and via a means that is convenient to each applicant. I'll let you go to the next slide, please. And of course, now we'll move towards first-time home buyer. First-time home buyer is specifically for that individual who has not owned a home within the most recent 3 years. First-time homebuyer grant funds in the amount of $12,500 can be applied to each qualifying household, and those funds can be utilized towards down payment assistance and/or closing cost assistance. I'll let you move to the next slide. The $1,000 minimum contribution is also applicable to the first-time homebuyer program, as was with the community partners piece. The home must be occupied and considered as the applicant's primary residence. And with the first-time homebuyer, we cannot express enough the importance of that homeownership counseling and financial literacy program. It is a huge benefit to each applicant and for those that will be benefiting from these grant proceeds. And the workforce housing, this is a new program that the Federal Home Loan Bank has provided. We've been really, really excited, and we have placed great emphasis on the need to address that of workforce housing. And so this expands the eligibility levels. This also offers a $15,000 incentive to those qualifying applicants. The $15,000 can be applied towards down payment and/or closing cost, and it is applicable to both first-time homebuyers and non-first-time homebuyers. Next slide, please. The workforce housing program does expand that income eligibility, and for qualifying applicants whom are above the 80% but within the 120% median income range, it does allow for that additional expansion and opportunities for those who may be in that upper tier income level. We found it to be a great incentive and one that's been highly needed. Again, with the workforce housing, there is the minimum $1,000 contribution that is required. Those cannot be grant proceeds. Those does have to come out of your individual savings. And there is no retention that is specific to the workforce housing program, no requirement in relation to a retention period. Homebuyer education and financial literacy is also applicable to that of the workforce housing program as well. But we're really proud to be able to provide these grant incentives. We're very proud that we can provide this across the entire state of Virginia and with our friends at Tidewater Home Funding. And so with that, I will pass the program back to G.